Batman fights Mechagodzilla, and the ending of this comic is crazy. So, what this does is this picks up with iPhone talking to the Justice League, right? And he's like, okay, I wish I could say that the worst is behind us because we're 10 days after all the Titans appeared, Godzilla, Kong, all those guys. And he says, but the data tells us that our troubles are just beginning. Superman's down, Supergirl is missing, and Shazam is likely a hostage of the Legion of Doom. We're no closer to finding Toyman and the Dreamstone than we were a week ago. Now, here's the important thing. The reason why Toyman and the Dreamstone is important, really the Dreamstone more than anything else, it's how the Legion of Doom would wish all the Titans back to their own reality when everything got sorted out. That's literally why the Titans are here, to basically destroy the Justice League. And they're doing it, man. Like, Godzilla took out Superman in the very first issue. Shazam went to go fight the Legion of Doom, and he was overpowered pretty quickly. Supergirl is doing her whole thing with Gorilla Grodd, and God only knows what those two are getting up to. But here's the funny thing, right? Aquaman chimes in and says, but it's not all bad news, guys. It's not all bad news, my fellow Justice Leaguers. The Atlantis Dome repair and reinforcement is almost complete. We'll be ready for another attack. And the rest of the Justice League is like, oh, well, thank God for small favors, Aquaman, because the safety and security of a dome full of fish people was at the top of our list. With everything going on, well, that's fantastic news, Aquaman. No one cares. Go protest along John Silver's. But then you switch over to Batman, and the hits keep coming, man. The punches keep coming. Because then with Batman, you have it established that yes, Godzilla is trapped under the ocean with nth metal chains. He cannot conceivably escape, right? There's no way for him to get it. He's just not powerful enough to do it. Which, by the way, for all you Godzilla fans out there, can he drown? Can Godzilla drown? Or is it just like he has gills or something, right? Like through the power of the plot, he can spend as much time underwater as he wants to? I have no clue. But they still have like 3 other Titans that are seemingly comparable to Godzilla that are making their way to Metropolis, right? The woolly mammoth Titan and the Spider-Man Titan and the Dragon Titan thing. I don't know anything about these characters, man. I know Godzilla, Muto, Mothra, and like Rodan and King Kong. And like, that's it, right? And according to Mariah, Rodan is just, he's a lazy guy, right? So here's the thing. What you do is you switch over to like what's going on with King Kong. Because for like the whole part of this story, like the whole very beginning of this, King Kong was just like on an island over there, doing nothing. Basically just totally smitten with Supergirl. He tried to put hands on, and then she helped him understand that that's not okay. But like, that's really all you had. That's really all you had. And so what we end up finding out, of course, is as we covered in the last video, that Gorilla Grodd, with his power of telepathy, had used green kryptonite to allow his telepathy to influence Supergirl. So he was controlling her, and seemingly by controlling her, he controls Kong. So like, it's kind of crazy, right? It's a little weird and wonky because Kong is like, well, I guess simp is the word. He'll do whatever Supergirl tells him to, right? Like he's just that smitten over that girl, which is kind of wild. But then you have like the whole thing with Superman, because what you have Batman doing is he says the Titans are headed to Metropolis, paths are being cleared to minimize damage, and the city's being evacuated. Make whatever final preparations you need to get ready. We make our final stand in Metropolis in Centennial Park. But then you have like Nightwing and Batman that are talking about Superman because he's been out of commission this entire time, right? Just been out of it ever since Godzilla just smacked him around and helped him understand his place in the bigger picture. And so it's just kind of like still leaving people flabbergasted, right? Like, what do we do without Superman? Because the Justice League without Superman is just like a team full of folks who can do some cool stuff sometimes, I guess. And so it's just like, what do we do, right? Batman tells them all, get out there, make your preparations. I will meet you all out there. So what it does is it puts on this idea that Batman is doing something with Superman's body to kind of help rejuvenate him. I don't know if that's true, and we'll find out at the end of the comic, because Lois Lane wakes up and Superman's gone. Like, his body is nowhere to be found. And so it's like, did Batman just supernap Superman? Is that really what he just did? But then you switch over to the Legion of Doom. Now, normally I would skip over this because literally the Legion of Doom just hasn't been doing anything important at all this entire story, outside of being the catalyst for why all the Titans are here in the first place. But what it does is it reveals that Lex Luthor is wearing a kryptonite-powered suit piloting the Mechagodzilla. Now, here's a kicker about all this, right? One of the things to know is Lex Luthor didn't just make Mechagodzilla on his own. He did, but he didn't, right? right? When the Legion of Doom went to the alternate reality and they got their hands on the Titans and brought them back, they also learned about Monarch. And anybody who follows the Godzilla mythos right now knows that Monarch is like the big organization that is investigating the Titans, learning about the Titans' strengths, weaknesses, all that kind of stuff, and developing countermeasures. Mechagodzilla, within the confines of this story, was one of the countermeasures developed by Monarch. And so Lex Luthor getting his hands on those plans allowed him to bring them here into the DC universe and then use them to start building Mechagodzilla. Now, here's the funny thing about this, right? Because he shows up on the scene and his idea is that he will demonstrate basically by sheer force of power to all the other Titans that he is the king of the monsters, right? The apex, the alpha, right? Whatever it is that you want to call it. And he's like, this is really interesting because like all the pieces are falling into place. And he's like, this is really interesting because when they arrive on the scene, Batman shows up in this just giant Jaeger suit, right? His own, Godzilla Buster armor, if you want to call it that, right? And it's like, of course Batman's been building his own giant robot. Why wouldn't he? And the question's even asked. Lex Luthor says, kudos, all I did was put this Mechagodzilla back together using everything that I had from Monarch. How'd you build yours so fast? And Batman's like, prep time, because when you have the power of prep time, you don't have to explain shit. So when Batman starts putting it all together, it's just total a team effort, right? Whatever, man, like, it's the power of prep time, right? We built a giant Jaeger suit in the span of 15 minutes, right? Because, like prep time, whatever. But Batman, with his suit, is designed to face off against the Titans, meaning it is designed to face off against Mechagodzilla. And it's dope, right? Like the fight between the two is solid, but here's the issue. All these other Titans have shown up here as well. And so what happens is the Green Lanterns, along with the other different superhero teams in DC Comics, they all start branching off and facing off against these different Titans. So it's like this just gigantic battle royale, right? Like in the city, like it's nuts. The Green Lanterns, and you guys aren't even gonna believe this, the Green Lanterns, they form a Megazord, son! They literally bring all their light constructs together and form a Megazord, which is going to be dope to see until the Green Power Ranger shows up and then wrecks them all and destroys the Megazord because the Green Ranger was better than the White Ranger. I don't care what anybody says. So once these guys all come together, right, like you have Donna Troy and you've got Wonder Woman, which Donna Troy is kind of like a poor man's Wonder Woman. Like Wonder Woman is the celebrity. Donna Troy is like a few steps down, right? Like the one you actually have a chance to date. Like that's the one that I'm talking about. That's Donna Troy. But like these two show up, right? They do their little bit of a damage here and there. You get like Red Hood and you get Damian Wayne who show up here and what actually is the Batwing that turns into its own mini robot. And I gotta be honest with you guys, man, if this thing is available for purchase, I would buy it, bro. Like I'd buy that and put it on a shelf downstairs, all the other comic book memorabilia, like my autographed copy of the first appearance of Reverse Flash in DC Comics. Man, it was dope. But this fight is pretty fantastic because everybody's doing what they can against these guys. But then Supergirl and King Kong enter the fray. And that's when everything starts to shift and starts to change. Because Supergirl is more than enough for like Wonder Woman, Donna Troy, really any of the superheroes here. Because she's right up there with Superman. And so initially they don't realize, especially like Wonder Woman and those guys, they don't realize what's happened here because as far as they know, again, like as we discussed in the beginning of the video, Supergirl just vanished. Right? They don't know what it was that happened to her. But once Grodd shows up on the scene with a green kryptonite horn and reveals that he's controlling Supergirl, then they become like the main focus, the one person they have to focus on. Now Kong shows up here and this guy immediately just starts taking out these other Titans, as you would expect, because King Kong's better than Godzilla. But he starts taking out every single one of these Titans and wrecking every single one of these guys. And then at that point, he turns on the Green Lanterns. Right now, the Green Lanterns are cool and everything, right? They got their Megazord and all that kind of stuff. They're the ones who figure out that Gorilla Grodd is mind controlling Supergirl. So it's like, okay, we got to go deal with her. But before they can, the fight comes down to like the Green Lanterns and King Kong. King Kong, right? They go throw a punch, right? They go to throw a punch here. King Kong's like, man, son, you better come strong, boy. He catches his hand, rips it right off, right? Like rips that thing off his shoulders, throws it on the ground, and it's like, dude, is that the best you guys got? right? Punching me with a giant green robot, right? Like, come on, man. You look like a walking, talking thing of Jello. No conceivable way you're gonna beat me with the power of love and thought. That's not gonna happen. So literally this arm belonged to Guy Gardner, right? Like one of the Green Lanterns. This guy goes flying out of it, lands on the ground, and then he immediately turns his attention to like Gorilla Grodd, right? Because like Gorilla Grodd's there on the scene. Gorilla Grodd kills him immediately, right? Literally steps on his head and smashes it. And this is one of those moments, right? Where the story's going in a direction where like all the different superheroes are losing, right? And like you expect like Superman to show up and save the day. Nope. Wrong. Guess who does show up to save the day, guys? Aquaman shows up. No, I'm just messing around. I mean, it is Aquaman, but I'm not gonna make fun of Aquaman anymore. But Aquaman does show up on the scene, right? So like, this kind of helps bolster things because Aquaman is murky, right? Aquaman is really, really weird. So if you guys ever read DC Rebirth, there's a story where like in Aquaman Rebirth, I wanna say it was Aquaman Rebirth, where he overpowered Superman. So like, it's a little weird because that was like the super strong version of Superman. Like he was ridiculously capable. So like Aquaman can do some stuff, right? Is he enough to turn the tide against like the forces of Gorilla Grodd and the entire Legion of Doom? I'm not 100% sure. But then like Kid Flash shows up and he's been playing Street Fighter because he uses E Honda's 100-hand slap, right? Just like, right? Just like punches the crap out of this guy. And then it all just kind of comes down to like Batman and Lex Luthor versus King Kong, right? And in fact, it's actually King Kong who starts going after Batman. So then what you get here in a moment that I was so excited to see, I didn't know it would happen this soon, but I was so excited to see. Beast Boy, right? Now, Beast Boy can turn into virtually any animal, right? I mean, this guy is legit. He can really shapeshift into almost anything that like he can imagine, right? It's crazy how this dude's powers work. Beast Boy shows up here and turns into his own variation of like King Kong. So you basically get like Beast Boy King Kong versus King Kong proper. And he's able to seemingly hold his own for a while because at the end of the day, I mean, the strength and ability of Kong is much more than any normal superhero on Earth outside of like the ones who are ultra strong. But if somebody can like turn themselves into King Kong with all the muscle mass and everything that goes with it, sure, they're gonna be equally capable. But then that's when you start to realize that they have to take out the horn of Gorilla Grodd, right? The kryptonite horn in order to release his mind control over Supergirl because King Kong is still under the control of Supergirl and even Gorilla Grodd. And so what ends up happening is Green Arrow tries to fire a shot to take this thing out. It doesn't work, but then the helmet is blown off by the combined effort of Damian Wayne and Jason Todd. Really more Jason Todd than anything else, because that guy, man, that guy's just got precision aim, right? I mean, it's absolutely nuts. He takes that thing off, and then Supergirl and Kong go back to their normal selves. And it's like, man, I think we've been on the wrong side. You think, right? Like, you think. And that's when you have the Green Lanterns who show up and they're like, Gorilla Grodd killed Guy Gardner, so now we gotta kill Gorilla Grodd. But in the midst of all that, the League of Assassins show up. And when they do, they bring a Skullcrawler with them. Because remember, the League of Assassins got their hands on one of the Skullcrawler skulls. I wanted to believe it was a skull of King Ghidorah, but you guys were just hell-bent on just raining on my parade and destroying my fun. I don't know why. That was pretty hardcore, guys. That was pretty crushing. Emotionally, not gonna lie. Right? But with the Skullcrawler being here, and really just kind of a bunch of Skullcrawlers, these are native to Skull Island, right? They only ever really fight King Kong, but you release them on the world, and God only knows what's gonna happen, right? So this complicates things even more. But then you get to the ending of this, ladies and gentlemen. You get to the ending of this, right? And this meteor flying across the sky, right? Smashes down into the water where Godzilla's at. And this voice just says, Godzilla, we have unfinished business. Superman is back, son! And it's time for Superman and Godzilla round 2, baby. And I can tell you right now, son, this next comic, bros, man, it's gonna be bonkers. I told you guys this ending was crazy. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. If you need to get caught up, make sure you click this playlist to all the other videos, and I will catch you all later. Peace.